sorry to bother you. We have a missing phone. If somebody turns one in, is there any way you can let us know?
Is it an iPhone?
It is.
Okay.
Brand new one.
Okay.
And the volume's down, so it doesn't enter service. So we're having a hard time.
Okay, if we find one, then I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna go look in the truck.
It's not in the truck.
Water, I guess. Water.
You want to grab it?
Sure, I see. Quick legs. I got one back there. Damn it. I did. I said you should probably get a seat. Okay, you didn't do it.
I just dropped mine. Good afternoon, folks. On behalf of the Hansen family and the Hansen family, thank you all so much for coming and honoring Gary's life. Before I turn everything over to celebrant Brian Bennett, I do ask that everybody reach into their purses and or their pockets and make sure that their cell phones are either off or muted. Thank you all so much. Again, I now turn everything over to celebrant Brian. Thank you.
Well, as Erica said, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much for being here. I always love to come early and be able to look at all the pictures and kind of feel the vibe of the people. And I gotta say, you guys are a little rowdy. And from the story I heard about Gary, he would be more than happy that this is exactly what's going on today. And I do want to say from the outset that I'm an Illinois boy, so I grew up a diehard Cubs and Bears fan. I hope that doesn't set us off on a bad foot. But I've gotten to meet lots of you so far, and I didn't even know that Detroit sports fans could be this nice. So, over the last decade or so, we've kind of moved away from calling what we're doing here this afternoon a funeral. And you're hearing more and more the phrase life celebration. And I like that transition, because as hard as a day like today is, and I know that it's brutal. Even when you expect it, I know this has been a rough few years for everybody connected to Nancy and family. And it's hard today, no doubt about it. But it sounds to me that there's a lot to celebrate in this man's life. And you guys are the pages and chapters of his story. And it means so much that you're here today. I have a normal day job like most of you. I'm a leadership consultant by day. That's what I do for a living. But I do this because a few years ago, I lost my mom to cancer. And what you're doing today became very personal to me. Coming together, seeing friends that maybe you don't get to see enough, sharing some stories, sharing some laughs, some tears. It is such an enormous part of the healing process. So thank you for making it an effort to be here today and for bringing your energy into this room. I was able to talk to Nancy for quite a while, and I just sat back and said, tell me a story. Tell me as much as you can. She just did a phenomenal job being able to paint their life together and the story that they had. I'm going to share a reading. A very wise person once said, it's okay to miss it. It's okay to continue to say his name every day. It's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to breathe deeply. It's okay to smile when you think of him. It's okay to have days when you can function. And it's going to be okay to have days when you just can't. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be thankful. It's okay to remember. It's okay to hope. And the biggest of all is it's okay to be honest about exactly how you're feeling. I think the biggest thing that I've learned about grief over the last few years is grief is very personal. It's messy. And it hits everybody differently. And the best thing that you can do for family and friends is to give each other the space to feel exactly how it is that you need to feel. There's really no right or wrong way to grieve. There's just your way to grieve. And the first year, if you've ever lost somebody, the first year is always the hardest because you have the first wedding anniversary, first birthday, the first everything is going to come up. And you're going to think you're doing better 7 months from now, and all of a sudden something out of the blue is going to happen, and it's going to take you right back to today. And the best thing that you can do for each other is just give each other the space. I'm a big reader, and one of my favorite authors is a guy named Frederick Bachman, and I was reading one of his books the other night, and this paragraph kind of popped off the page, so I got up and I typed it out because I thought it was so powerful. It says, over time, I've realized that deep down, almost everyone asks themselves the same sort of questions about life, especially as we get a little older. We start to ask ourselves, am I a good person? Have I made anyone proud? Am I useful to society? Was I good at my job? Am I considered generous and considerate? Does anyone want me to be their friend? Have I been a good parent? Am I a good person? And ultimately, we ask ourselves the question, my life even matter? And you guys are showing with a lot of energy, Gary's life mattered, didn't it? And it sounds to me from the story that I've heard, he could go down that list and check yes, 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 and yes to every single one of those questions. Ernest Hemingway once said, in our darkest moments, we don't need advice from anybody. What we truly need is presence. We need people that will sit with us in the shadows to acknowledge our suffering without trying to fix it. In those moments, silence and understanding speak louder than words. So offering a quiet strength that reminds us we're not alone in this. It's not solutions we seek, but it's connection. I think it'd be powerful if somehow we could look down this room and see all the decades, all the relationships, all the friendships, all the memories and the conversations. I'm a big believer in something that I call holy collisions. And what I mean by that is if you think back over the course of your life, there are certain times that we are lucky enough to run into the exact right person at the exact right time of our lives for the exact right reason that we were supposed to run into that person. That's what I call a holy collision. You might be sitting next to one of your holy collisions right now. And you think back to that first moment you met. You know, who saw the other first? Who made the first contact? What was it you saw in each other that has pushed through the layers of acquaintance and friendship and become the significant relationship it is today? Because if you think about it, we can set aside all of our possessions, all the stuff we've ever accomplished, and what life really boils down to are those holy collisions, significant relationships. That's why you're here today, because no doubt somewhere along the line, your path and Gary and Nancy's have crossed. And it sounds to me like everybody he met was a holy collision. Well, whenever I have the privilege to do a service like this, I consider this group of people sitting in this chapel on this day, we're our own version of a holy collision. You cannot explain why this group of human beings would ever be at the same place at the same time. Yet here we are. And let's be honest, when we parked our cars a little bit ago, every one of us had things we're worried about. We have decisions we're trying to make. There might be something going on in your life this afternoon that nobody else in this room is even aware of. And all that stuff's gonna be waiting for us when we go back and get our cars. So my hope and my prayer today is that by the time we go back and join our busy lives, we're gonna take some of Gary's spirit with us. And to me, that's the best way to celebrate someone's life. When you're inspired by them, when you remember something, when you have a different perspective. And so that's our goal here today as we come together for this life celebration. And if you're comfortable joining me, I'd like to invite you, if you would, to join me for a word of prayer. Okay? Let's pray. God, I thank you for this exact holy collision of friends and family, all the relationships that exist in this room right now. And God, I don't understand how you do it, but I have a personal belief that you can look down a room like this, and you know what's going on in the lives of every person in every chair in this room. So I pray that for the few minutes we have to pay attention to Gary's story, that we might be able to look at our own lives differently. Because most of us in here, we have people that are watching us. We have people that are watching how we handle good times and hard times and all the times in between. So I thank you for Gary, for his obvious impact, to have this many people show up to pay tribute to his life. And I pray that his message and his energy isn't done yet, that he's still going to make a difference simply because we get to come together today. In your name we pray these things. Amen. You know, in his 71 years, I would think most of us would agree that his biggest holy collision is this lovely lady down here. I got to hear the story. I always love to hear the story of how you met. And she said that they were 14 and 16 at the time and had a junior achievement event in high school. And Gary would take credit for noticing you first. Is that right? Whether that's true or not, we don't care. But this was way back before dating apps, and they swiped right on each other. And that has led to a long, great life together. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to get out of the way, because the people that knew him very well are going to come up. We're going to be led off by Tim, and then Kyle's going to come up, and then Fred, and then Mary Kay, and then Kyle's going to swing back and land anchor for us after that. So in that order, Tim, Kyle, Fred, Mary Kay, and then Kyle.
I have never spoken at a legislature before. Trying to verbalize personal remembrances of someone you love is pretty hard. Even for somebody who doesn't mind public speaking. So I've been telling Nancy for 2 weeks that I couldn't do this. But I kept thinking that, hey, Gary would do this for any of us. And gee, you would probably give me a hard time for being afraid. So I'm going to try to do this. I brought along a couple crutches, a beer that Gary would make fun of, and some notes, and then cheap with. When Gary called me and told me he had stage 4 cancer, my head went immediately to the unfairness of it, and to all the fun, planned and unplanned, that he and Nancy were supposed to have together as they grew old. It was a regrettably brief conversation, because I knew he had dozens of people to call. And I was in shock. I wanted to help, but I knew I couldn't. And I wanted to say exactly the right thing, but the best I could choke out was, and I love you and I'll be there for you. But then after we hung up, a very selfish realization overwhelmed me. I thought, I might have to live the rest of my life without Gary. How could that be possible at our age? certainly we'd be old together, wouldn't we? I had never imagined that I have to live without Gary's wisdom and support, his friendship to rely on. The countless stories, I know Roger's sitting out there and Martin and everything, and I'm gonna tell countless stories. But really, the countless stories of how his influence and support changed my life and helped me become who I am today are just too long and personal for here. But I wouldn't really have to tell any of you that anyway, would I? Every person here has their own Gary story. Some are inspirational, some are funny, some are touching, and some are probably just crazy. And that's because Gary was all those things. When we were younger, at that age, when guys are trying to find their way in life, Gary and Robert seemed to have it all together. Both of us were always, both of us were always pretty determined to be right. But when we face similar challenges, he has a much broader and gentler perspective than my combative nature. A lot of times we'd be discussing how to handle disagreement we were having with someone. Gary would just want to let it go. I'd say, but Gary, we're right. And he would invariably say, of course we're right. But is this really an argument you want to have? That's a lesson well learned that I always try to remember now. I also frequently asked his advice about career options because I really admired his career at IBM, at the time one of the most prestigious companies in America. I mean, this guy wore a suit and tie to work every day. While most of my friends and relatives were factory rats and florists, and they get dressed up for work. But when I mentioned how cool his job was, Gary almost always deflected that compliment by saying he was only an executive by day and an asshole by night. But I knew better. He was actually a leader, a teacher, an intellect, a generous volunteer, obviously the best organizer, a fun partner in euchre and golf and bowling, as well as a loving husband and dad and grandpa. I'm sure you all know that he was definitely a man of uncompromised principles. And best of all, he was our friend. My friend. They say a person's never really gone until there's no one left who says his name. But this is a big crowd of family and friends. But it's just the beginning of countless people whose lives Gary touched. So I know that stories and memories of Gary will live on with us and others. And we talk about him until we can't talk anymore.
First
First of all, I'd like to apologize, because you have to hear from me twice, so. One of Dad's best friends, Mike Sergey, if not his best friend, asked me to read this for him. I first met Gary in 1977 when he joined IBM as a systems engineer trainee. I was working for IBM as a data center operator, having joined IBM in 1976. I was conducting a new hire orientation program that Gary participated in, and the objective of the program was to familiarize new hires with the equipment that they would be supporting. Gary and I hit it off right away and became good friends. Little did we know that our friendship would continue to grow over the next 48 years. Throughout those 48 years, we had countless adventures, a couple that come to mind. We both lived in Novi and would stop off for a beer or two after work, and I was following Gary home one night, and Gary stopped while turning right. Unfortunately, I didn't stop, and I smashed into Gary's van. Right behind me was a police car with radiators turned on as flashers. And Gary got out of his van and was telling the officer that everything was fine, that we were close friends, and the officer looked at the damage to Gary's van and he said, "Looks like you two are really close friends." Luckily, he let us off with a warning. Another memorable moment was when Gary and Nancy asked me to babysit my godchild, Kate. Kate was still in diapers, so I was a bit worried. Nancy told me that I had nothing to worry about at all and all would be fine. Let's just say it didn't work out. I successfully changed the diaper and in the process, used all the wet wipes. All 400 of them. My favorite memories came from the time spent with Gary on the golf course, our road trips to watch NASCAR races with Ben, Kyle, Brad, Wesley, my grandson Thomas, and our good friend Don Crane. Meeting for breakfast or lunch, dinners with Nancy and Tony, and so many more. When Gary entered hospice, I visited him daily. I shared some stories, and I told him that I loved him. The following passage captures my feelings perfectly, and I want to share it. I think I will ask God why for the rest of my life, and never will I come to understand it. Even if God himself came in front of me and told me the reason, I don't think I would accept it. Some loves are too hard to bear, and with great love comes great pain, and with great loss comes the greatest pain of all. If love could have saved you, you would have lived forever.
I'm Fred Kramer, and I work with Gary. Gary and I work together, right? And Gary and I played golf together. And Gary and I were friends. And the greatest gift he gave me was he shared his family. So, at IBM, Gary gave. He was a giver. Everybody that he had the privilege to manage, he helped develop and be more successful and move on. Gary liked to give. He was in the Optimist Club. He was the president. I invited him to the Dave McDonald's Club when I was president, and he invited me to the Optimist Club. He gave. He wanted to do that. And I think I'll think back the most about Gary and the times we were together. Yeah, we went to Myrtle Beach together, 35 times probably, Tom. And I knew Gary had cancer. He never told anybody. We went to Myrtle Beach, and these are guys that he's known for 20, 30 years. And he never told anybody. I beat Gary by 19 strokes on the last day playing the top. And I knew something was wrong, because I'm not that good. Gary told me then that he had cancer and stage 4 and he wasn't going to live. And that was pretty tough. But I'm wondering, Kyle wife told me to wear something from 4th of July, and I did, but I wore a t-shirt here because Gary managed our group at Myrtle Beach for years. And one year when we checked in, they gave Gary and I a t-shirt, or sweatshirt. So and I'm wearing this sweatshirt for Gary. He gave so much, and I just want to be able to honor him in some form or fashion. So, yeah, he burnt his money up in a microwave. He lost his glasses in the ocean, not once, but twice. So there were some issues, but at the end of the day, it was always about his giving. So I sat there and I said, what can I say, kind of summarize this, or say something that's really important? So I went around and asked other people, when I say Gary Hansen, what does that mean to them? What do you admire most about Gary? So Ron Testa said, I remember the day that Alder High School asked him to sign a letter that he didn't believe it. And he wouldn't do it. And it cost him his job. And he said, Gary, Ron said to that man, I admire Gary more than I ever thought I ever could. I asked one of the teachers that worked with him, Allison Shank, what she thought most about Gary. He said, that man loves his wife. He said, you know, maybe not every day. Overall, this man is committed to his family. And so when we had Big Dog Football League, fantasy football, and didn't have enough owners, he brought his family to help us. When we needed something, another player for a car to Jim Parrish's house, he brought us, his dad. This man gave, and I just can't say that enough. Lastly, I'm trying to think of, when my father was dying, I asked him these two questions. Dad, are you afraid to die? Gary wasn't afraid to die. I would have been. Gary came to the old geezers meeting and went step by step of what he went through with all the doctors and stuff, and told his story. Gary was not afraid to die. The second thing I asked my dad was, Dad, if you had to do it all over again, what would you have done different? And he said, I would have traveled while I was young and paid for it in the rocking chair. He took Kyle and Ben and Katie always on trips with them. They traveled all over the place together. They bought a place in Michigan together. He gave to the family. So I'm done, but I just want to tell you that I'm honored to have known that man and how he gave, and he was a model to raise a family by. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Mary Kay Campbell. I am one of Gary's many nieces. And just had a few things I wanted to say. First and foremost, sorry, I need to write this down so I can get it together. I want to thank Aunt Nancy, Ben, Kyle, Katie, Maggie, Stacy, Brad, Wesley, and Cindy for their efforts in coordinating this event in true Gary style. From the red, white, and blue to the suspenders, and especially to the beer and wine, I'm certain we can all, as a family, agree that Gary would approve of this. Secondly, I wanted to extend my apologies to you because my brothers and I were not able to come in these past few weeks to visit personally, but I think that you and Uncle Gary would agree that we sent the most valuable representative from our family during this time. Some of my first memories of Uncle Gary were riding tricycles, I think in Farmington Hills. And the family, I can't even think of the name. The talent show. Sorry. The family talent show we used to have every Christmas. And I remember when you were moving to Ohio, being a little sad and disappointed because we had so much fun together at those houses before you moved. And little did I know we would still have so much fun down here in Ohio. Another vivid memory in my childhood of Uncle Gary was my first car accident. It was a brown van that Gary was driving. I don't remember who else was in it. I know it was packed full of my cousins, and my Nana was in the passenger seat. And as scary and traumatizing as that accident was, Uncle Gary immediately got out of the car, and I remember he went straight to the other car and proceeded to chew them out because he had a van full of children, and it was unacceptable that this had happened. Meanwhile, my Nana was trying to calm everybody down. Other memories always included 4th of July, which was a great celebration for all of our family, and memories that we all cherish thanks to Uncle Gary and Aunt Nancy. Specifically, one of those 4th of Julys, there was a bet made with my mother that she couldn't actually ride all of the rides at King Island. And she took on that bet from Gary and my other uncles, and we all went to King Island for the day. And I believe there were 8 roller coasters. By the end of the evening, she had accomplished 7, and then King Island closed. And when we went back, Uncle Gary was very clear that she did not accomplish the goal, and she could no longer get the money. Fast forward to about a year or 2 ago, we took Mom to tree climbing and zip lining. She was a little less than successful there as well, but she did it. And after Uncle Gary watched the video, in the background I said, you know, Gary, I think this qualifies as the 8th roller coaster. And he said, well, I don't know. I have to consult with all of the uncles. And at that point, a few had passed. And she said, well, wait, and he goes, yeah, I gotta get to heaven first. And then we'll let you know. So I say this to say that I do believe in signs. I do believe that we've had a rough road as a family these past couple of years, but I do believe they're looking down on us. And if I should stumble upon a $100 bill, I will know exactly who that is. I may not pass it on. And I know who it will be from. And I'm just very grateful for the love and generosity and the devotion to our family that Uncle Gary and all of my aunts and uncles have had over the years. Thank you.
I'm back. For those of you who haven't checked, my watch just told me that the Tigers won, so I'm sorry. Over the past few weeks, even though Dad was with us, I found myself struggling with what to say about a man whose life was so broad and full of joy. I felt like every note that I scribbled down, every story I started to write was somehow incomplete. Nothing seemed to quite do justice to the man that he was. I kept thinking, how do you sum up someone who meant so much to so many people in just a few pages or words? While I was still in hospice, I really wanted to ask him how he wanted to be remembered. And it was hurting me that I felt like he was too far gone to be able to ask that. Fortunately, Maggie helped me find a way, as she told me, as for remembering him, he spent his whole life showing you how he wanted to be remembered. She was right. He probably wouldn't say it quite that directly, but if you spent any real time with Dad, you got a picture of who he was pretty quickly. He would also probably say that any stories that I tell here today will probably be exaggerated, or that I'm about to get the details of the story wrong because, well, I like a good story, and he'd be right about that too. There are 3 people that my dad always said would grow a story just a little bit bigger each time they told it. That would be my cousin Brian, Fred Kramer, who we already heard from here today, and myself. But unlike those 2 guys, I have an excuse. I inherited that trait from Gary Lee Hansen. Gary Lee Hansen. Dad had a lot of names from a lot of different people that he went by. Gary Lee Hansen, Gary Lee, Mr. Hansen, Mr. President, the penalty box dad, an optimist, an old guy, the favorite cousin, the best friend, big brother, little brother, grandpa, husband, Gary, dad. Or, as my brother Ben would say, even while talking to Katie and I, my dad. He'd say, hey Kyle, my dad wants to know if you want to go golfing tomorrow. There are probably some other names out there that aren't time to talk about, or that maybe I don't even know about. I've been thinking a lot about all of those names, all of those roles that he played over the years. And I've thought about what it meant to be his son, and what it's meant to see him become a grandpa. And of course, I think he was a great dad. Lots of people think that their dad's the best dad in the world, and to be honest, I'm not here to argue about that. But part of what my dad's life that inspires me the most, the part that I think that says the most about who he chose to be, is Uncle Gary. I think that being a great dad or being a great grandpa, that's expected of you. It's part of the job. But Uncle Gary, that was something that he made up as he went along, and he turned it into something awesome and bigger than any of us could have expected. Here's a breakdown of just some of the people that he was Uncle Gary to. 13 nieces, 11 nephews, 7 nieces in-law, 6 nephews in-law, 9 great nieces, 18 great nephews. And pretty soon, even though Dee is not here, we're going to have a great niece-in-law joining the Hansen family as well. And all of that is before you even get to the people who called him Uncle Gary for other people's sake. His brothers and sisters, both in birth and in law, his own cousins, their kids' kids, all of these different people who knew him as Uncle Gary. He was Uncle Gary to near over 100 different people, and he took that job very seriously, even when he wasn't being serious at all. This is the same man who, at any given moment, might be convincing a great niece to eat a lightning bug, or convincing a nephew to drop ice down a younger brother's pants when he wasn't looking. And then later, that same man might show up to a niece's workplace with a cup of coffee just to surprise her, only to miss her and leave a note saying he was sorry that he missed her, but he hoped she had a good day. This is a man who stayed tuned into his nieces and nephews' lives, not just the big milestones, but the everyday stuff too. He'd reach out just to ask how school was going, or to wish them luck before a test or performance. He paid attention and he made time. He personally knew what it felt like to join a massive, already in motion family, as an in-law joining the Gumble family. So when the nieces and nephews started getting married, first with Matt marrying Colleen, Dad made a deliberate point to be the kind of presence that made people feel included, not overwhelmed. He threw himself into making those new nephews and nieces feel like they weren't just welcome, but wanted. And before long, they were part of the jokes and the chaos and the Christmas carols and the family photos where he'd crack a joke just as the camera clicked so that everybody would be laughing and blinking all at the same time. Family holidays were a huge part of how he crafted his Uncle Gary persona. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Memorial Day, Labor Day. I think those were the four big ones, the really important ones. Yeah, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Memorial Day, Labor Day. That's mostly it. I could talk for hours about the 4th of July parties, about the decorations, the amazing moments with friends and family, but there are two things that are very interesting to me about Dad and his love of 4th. First of all, his love of all things, stars and stripes, was infectious. I know this must be true because unlike most people getting ready for an important event, a funeral or wedding or anything like that, deciding what suit and tie or dress and heels to wear, I spent weeks thinking about which USA t-shirts and tank tops and hats and glasses and bandanas and swim trunks and pajama pants that I already owned and were sitting in my own closet that I wanted to pack and wear as honor. And even with all of that, I still felt like I needed to buy something new and fresh and something that might make a niece or nephew or a younger cousin laugh or giggle because of how over the top it is, because that's what he would do. He'd do it for a laugh, even if it meant making a fool of himself. Especially if it meant making a fool of himself. The second thing that strikes me about the great 4th of July parties he threw, and I think even more impactful, this man wanted, he truly desired a week-long house full of loud, laughing, chaotic family every single 4th of July, not because it was easy or because he felt obligated, because he loved seeing all the kids and cousins under one roof, playing games, sharing food, going to Kings Island, shooting each other with water guns and throwing water balloons at each other, and finding Aunt Donna and hitting her in the face with water balloons 40 times in a row. He wanted to see all of that because he understood how rare and precious that kind of family connection was. And he worked to strengthen it and make it real every single year. That's what it meant to be Uncle Gary. It meant showing up. It meant caring deeply and when necessary, making a big show of it. It meant giving his time, giving his attention, giving his home. And sometimes, well, a lot of the time, it meant giving you a hard time too. Because he was a jokester. He was a button pusher and he so loved an audience. At family gatherings, you can often find him holding court, telling stories with just the right amount of inappropriateness to make the kids feel like they were in on some sort of adult secret, but never so much that he'd get anything more than a soft or an eye roll or an ew from the parents. And if he really, really pushed the boundaries, maybe after a couple of years, he just might get mom trying not to smile at whatever it was that he had just said, rolling her eyes and instead giving a sharp, "Gary." When Maggie and Brad and Stacy joined the family, he was thrilled to expand his audience. With new partners to embarrass each of his kids with, he found ways to get all three of them in on the jokes. And once Wesley and Sidney came along, there was nothing he loved more than hearing a loud shout in the morning of "Grandpa!" Except maybe watching them learn something new for the first time, or maybe telling a joke and getting them to roll their eyes too, just kind of look at him like, "Oh, okay, there you go, Grandpa." Because as he found out, if there's anything funnier and lamer than a dad joke or an uncle joke, it is in fact a grandpa joke. Dad was ridiculous, intentionally embarrassing at times. The kind of dad who would hike his boxers up to his chest at band just to make friends laugh. The kind of guy who'd get the whole family shouting, "We love you, Shrews," just so that a crowd, just from the crowd, so that he could get his daughter to blush while playing in the band. The kind of man who would buy a fake mohawk in solidarity with a hockey team heading into the state tournament, who would all shave their heads just so he could go out there and watch his son play. Kind of man who would sit in the penalty box at a game and somehow always knew whether the moment called for comfort or encouragement, or just calling you a knucklehead for throwing a punch. The kind of man who didn't get too mad when my friends and I accidentally put a hole in the basement wall for hosting our own fight club in the basement. Or when we shot thousands of little bits of starchy potato out of a pellet gun all over his kitchen and living room. As my friend Jack said, I don't think there was any friend's home that felt more like a second home than the Hansen abode. And while he never made a big show of it, he was deeply thoughtful. He had wisdom and a rare gift for understanding life's transition points. Watching babies, which he loved, learn and grow into toddlers, into kids, into teenagers, into young men and women. He knew the right way to deal with kids of all ages and could find a special way to connect with you just by meeting you where you were in life. Whether it was playing silly games with toddlers like stacking cups as high as possible just to eventually watch you knock them down, or possibly dunking a tiny ball through a cup holder that was sitting there just to watch you laugh and giggle, to watching and wanting to play golf with any of his nephews rather than his own friends just because he liked to hang out with them. He helped so many of us through those transition moments in life with humor, care, and providing a healthy dose of humility just to help keep us grounded. My dad believed that love was not finite. He didn't ration it up or save it up. He gave it freely and fully and often hilariously. And he had this way of making you feel like his favorite person in the world, even when you knew that the title was technically meaningless. He would say things like, "Yes, you're my favorite granddaughter," to his only granddaughter. Or he would call me his favorite youngest son. Once you were part of his world, you were assigned some ridiculously specific title. Favorite fifth grade nephew. Best third cousin once removed on a Tuesday. And somehow, even though you knew that it was crap and the math didn't add up, it still made you feel nice and made you feel chosen. He didn't just care about people. He cared about who they were becoming. He would cheer you on to pursue something just because you loved it. Even if you weren't great at it, he would gently push you towards strengths that you hadn't noticed in yourself, and he'd always remind you that your worth isn't in your resume or your skills or your successes, but the company that you keep and the things that you learn from them. Those reminders carried weight from that man because they came from somebody who lived by his own example. Someone who excelled not by chasing perfection or excellence, but by staying curious, by being a learner first. That love of learning may be what made Dad such a natural teacher. Not just in his work, but in the way that he moved through the world. He was open and curious and always ready to reconsider, to absorb, and to grow. He didn't need to be right, though he often was, and he would remind you of that fact. But he needed to be learning. If he brought a fact that challenged his view, he'd take it in, debate it, and make sure it was full of truth. But if he found it true, he would happily enjoy the fact that he learned something new. He was humble in serious matters and aggressively not humble in games and fun. If he knew the answer that no one else did, he would happily tell you how he got there, not to brag, but to elevate your understanding of whatever it was too. He didn't care about being impressive. He cared about being kind. He cared about being present. And he cared about building memories and being a part of them. He didn't need to be the center of attention, but he often was, just based on how many of us wanted to spend time with him. The truth is, he wasn't just Uncle Gary to our family. While others may not have called him that directly, he acted like Uncle Gary to friends, neighbors, students, to people who only met him once but remembered how he made them feel. seen, welcomed, important. And that's what I'll always carry with me. Not just the dad stuff, which we all get some of that to some extent. Not just the laughs or the eye rolls or the golf and bowling, which brought him comfort in God. But the example he set in how to show up for people and how to love beyond what is expected of you. I am unbelievably lucky that I got to call him Dad. But I know that so many people feel just as lucky that they got to call him Gary, or Gary Lee, or Mr. Hansen, or Grandpa, or Uncle Gary. And if it's true that love is not finite, then maybe that's the lesson that he leaves with us. That we can keep loving like he did, keep showing up, keep checking in, keep playing the fool if it makes someone, anyone smile, and keep setting a table big enough for anybody who needs a seat. I miss you every day, Dad, and I love you. Thank you.
I think on behalf of all of us, I can really say that as well. I've been doing this a long time, and that was one of the most unbelievable tributes. Showed a lot of courage for all of you, for, Nancy took a lot of care in selecting people from different chapters of his life. You all just did a phenomenal job, and I don't want to add to anything of that. The only thing that, yes, sir.
I'm looking to say.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, great other friend, man. I just want to say, he said, you know, how Eric saying, he said, please leave me alone, I'm on vacation.
And a lot of you may have great memories, and I would encourage you in the days, weeks, months ahead, get those memories, write them out, put them on the social media or some way, get them to the family, because all those little stories and memories are where the healing comes from. And one thing that Nancy told me that I wanted to make sure to say is I was asking her to describe him, and she said he was determined. He was committed. If he set his mind to do something, he was going to do it. He lived that way, and it sounds like he fought that way these last few years. And if you were someone Gary cared about, he loved to show up for you. We just heard that. As I close, I have 3 sons of my own. And a couple of years ago, on January the 2nd, I was with my middle son, Elijah. And we were doing maybe what Gary was doing that night, maybe what many of you were doing that night, because it was a big Monday night down in this part of Ohio. Because that night, the Bengals were getting ready to play the Bills. Monday Night Football. Stadium was packed, there was a lot of excitement. But if you remember anything about that night, you remember that all came to a screeching halt the moment that young DeMar Hamlin hit the turf. Whether you're a sports fan or not, it'd be hard to not know something of that night because the story literally traveled around the globe. And other than watching the events of 9/11, I don't think I ever remember watching anything more surreal on television. For the next hour, the broadcasters didn't know what to tell us. For all we knew, we just saw someone die on national television. 60,000 fans were silent. These young athletes in the prime of their life were kneeling and shaking and crying. Because that's what loss does. That's what trauma does. We don't have anywhere to put it. And in the next couple of days, I don't think I ever remember hearing so much open talk about prayer and miracles. And if you remember the story, it worked for them because 2 days later, DeMar Hamlin woke up. And if you know the story, he couldn't talk because he still had a lot of tubes in his throat, but he could write. So they gave him a small whiteboard and a marker. And reportedly, the first thing that he wrote down was, "Did we win the game?" And in a moment of profound wisdom, the doctor dealing with DeMar Hamlin said, "You did." We didn't even finish that other game. But DeMar, you win. I had every belief that the moment that Gary took his last breath on this side of heaven, Jesus Christ looked him in the eye and said, "Well done. You win." What one of us in this room wouldn't give everything when this happens to us to have a room full of this kind of energy? To have a son say the kind of things that his son did. And what if life wasn't added up necessarily by years, but it was added up by impact? Gary wins. And I used to think, after losing my mom especially, I used to think that when we finally got to wherever this heaven place is, we would hear a lot of people asking why. Why didn't you get our miracle? Why? Why didn't you fix this? Why did you let this happen? But I don't think that anymore. I don't think the number one thing we're going to hear is a long line of people asking why. I think we're going to hear a long line of people going, "Oh, wow. Wow." Because I believe Gary's in a place where there is no cancer. There is no COVID. There is no war in the Middle East. And I believe that by the way he lived his life, he got a man that's going to be really waiting to see all of you. And if you share that belief at any level today, then you don't have to say goodbye. You can simply say to your husband, to your dad, to grandpa, "We'll see you later." I want to close with a reading that I hope brings honor to Gary's life. Because the one thing that we all still have that he does not is time. We all have relationships, and that's what this reading is about. It says this: "If I were to die today, would I be proud of the life that I've lived? If I die tomorrow, was I happy? Would I be proud of the person that I've become? Was there love in my life? Have I given enough love? Have I shown those I love the real me? Could I have done things better or differently? Will anybody miss me? Will anyone on earth be better because I was there?" Because the truth is, not one of us sitting in this room this afternoon knows for sure we're going to wake up tomorrow. We did not walk into this room with that guarantee. So, if you don't like who you've been up to this moment, make a change and make it today in Gary's honor. If you have a broken relationship with someone you really care about, fix it today. If you can give more love, give it now. If you can play more and work less, decide and commit to do that today. If you can do anything to improve the quality of your life, make that commitment today. Everything that cannot wait for tomorrow. If you need to make a phone call, make it today. You need to apologize to somebody, say you're sorry. If you need to give somebody a hug, give them a hug. What if we woke up every day, not so worried about how the other person may or may not react, but we got up every day like Gary did, just committed, today I'm going to be the very best version of myself. When I'm present, when I'm living in the moment. So get excited about your life. Love your life while you're still living it. Because our new life starts right now. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your holy collision today. Thank you for the people who spoke. Thank you for representing your family. You got to come up against somebody and live life exactly as it ought to be lived. And let's let us be inspired by that as we leave this place today. I'm going to close the word of prayer, and I'm going to turn it back over to Eric to dismiss us. Okay? Let's pray. God, thank you for the power of relationship that is in this room today. It's just, it's electric. And I know there's a lot of hurt here today. And I know that it doesn't make sense to be able to lose somebody that was filled with so much life. But I thank you for the way that you made Gary. I thank you for how committed he was, how loyal he was, how energetic he was. And like Kyle said, I pray that we can all pick up that pace, that we can make that kind of difference in our own families, with our own friendship circles. So God, I pray a blessing on everybody in this room for the days and weeks and months ahead. And thank you for reminding us how precious life and relationships are. In your name we pray these things. Amen.
Amen.
Folks, this does conclude the funeral services this afternoon. Again, on behalf of the Ratsong family and the Hansen family, thank you all so much for coming and honoring Gary's life. I ask that everyone remain seated until Jenna dismisses everyone from her row so you can pay your final respects to the family. May you all go in peace. Thank you.
When I get there, I say Kyle, thanks for coming. Kyle, thanks for coming.